Today we are joined by Arnold Tarling, Chartered Surveyor, Building Safety Expert and commentator on fire risk assessments and regulatory effectiveness. Thanks for joining us, Arnold.
Thanks, Arnold.
Pleasure to be with you, George and Jake.
Welcome to Firewatch, Arnold. What we'd like to do to start with is just ask you, obviously, to introduce yourself a little bit, but tell us how you found yourself having a career in fire safety as well.
Okay, right. Started many years ago. I started qualified as a quantity surveyor with the sole intention of being a building surveyor, because quantity surveyors meet lots of different architects, lots of different designs, work on lots of different jobs. And I saw that as the better way of getting into building surveying. My first job was on an under-fires play park in Hackney, and they brought in log cabins for that, and they had to be fireproofed. And the architect was always off unwell, and so I, as a quantity surveyor, ended up specifying all of the fire stopping and all of the materials. And there's a particular problem with the log cabins is they don't remain at the original height where you built them. They get smaller because they settle down. So everything had to be designed to take into account the fact that the building would be slipping down. And I was using intumescent paints, and back in those days, asbestos cement, because that's what we had available. A later job that I had was in Farringdon Street, and I was doing the quantity surveying on that. They had a lot of sprayed material going over the beams, and I didn't trust Morseau's calculations. So I learned about the HPA factors, the design of the actual fire spray, how deep it should be, remeasured it and saved the client quite a bit of money. But it went on from there. I just went learning and learning and learning. When I got into building surveying, I then ended up working in landlord and tenant for statutory nuisance disrepair. And I was appalled by the appalling fire safety in buildings. I was always reporting on it in my reports. And the reason I got known was after the Lakanal House fire, where a number of people died trapped in properties because of changes that had been made to the building. They were no longer Section 20 London Building Act buildings. Had they remained how they were originally, nobody would have died. Nobody at all. And I did a report on that, and that went to one of the councillors. The councillor then contacted the local press. And then I had BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and other people coming to me on the advice. Then it came to other fires and the big one, Grenfell. And I had been warning DCLG about the combustible materials going on buildings, high pressure laminate, the actual ACM cladding, the insulation, which I knew would burn, that went on. And it just grew from there. So people have contacting me from that. I did a lot of stuff with BBC after Lakanal House, going around checking buildings which did not comply. They had fire risk assessments which were complete and utter rubbish, weren't fit for purpose, and revealing what was going on, because Southwark Council had sent some people out on training. They were housing officers, and they had a few days training with the London Fire Brigade, and now they were fire risk assessors, which was a complete nonsense. And it's just grown from there. So every opportunity I get on any job, anything that's new, I learn about it. And being a quantity surveyor, being trained in specifying materials, how's it fitted? How's it work? What do you also need? What are the bits it has to be fitted into? So we would be picking up on things which the architect had missed, getting things corrected so that the actual fire stopping would work. So that's how I got into it. That's how people know me. I've been speaker twice for the British Standards, quite a few other events, even Northern Ireland Building Control. I did talk over there. And it's a matter of getting the information out and trying to improve the industry and getting people to install things properly.
How do you think, have you seen much change on that over the last few years since Grenfell? How do you think the industry is starting to take shape after that? Do you think people are starting to take this information on, or not so much?
A few people have. I know Waits put in a lot of work with people working out where they were going wrong, if at all, and what to do to put things right. But the bulk of builders are just simply carrying on doing what they've always done, and we still haven't got away from the cheapest option where things get missed. I don't see much of an improvement across the industry. It should have been a game changer. It hasn't been.
Can you just to summarise for those people who may be listening that aren't fully aware of Grenfell and what happened, just a very brief overview of why the fire started and why it was so tragic?
Well, the fact is, the reason why a fire starts is entirely irrelevant. What is relevant is why it spread, how it got out of the building, how it, killed so many people. So the building originally was built with non-combustible materials, and had they not improved the building by cladding it, nobody would have died. The fire would have remained in the flat and it would never have spread. But in the fire, things have been changed from the original construction. Again, it was Section 20 London Building Act building, which predates the current building regulations and actually goes back to the Great Fire of London. And what happened in that building is they had changed the windows. They had improved the building by putting combustible polyisocyanurate insulation on the outside. And then they had clad it with an aluminium composite material. So you've got two sheets of aluminium with a plastic core, which in a fire catches fire. It's like solid petrol. It's dropping out, the fire spreading up. It bypasses all of the fire stopping. So even if the Lamatherm fire stopping at the floors had been installed the right way round, and in some places it hadn't been, it still wouldn't have worked because the fire would have bypassed it, because of the heat would have melted the next piece of plastic inside the next aluminium composite material. That would be falling out. And the problem is, you can't put that fire out. You spray it with water, you're hitting an aluminium surface, and it's not putting the fire out. And it was foreseeable because it's happened in other countries. This material should never have been passed for use. And then you get down to questioning the BBA certificate, the British Board of Agreement certificates, which declare that it's safe based upon tests carried out by other people, tests which are faked, tests which are rigged. And it turned out in the inquiry that the building research establishment had faked the testing of the insulation to get it on the building by using magnesium silicate boards, which you don't use on the outside of a building because it's affected by damp. It then releases chemicals which corrode the steel or aluminium and wreck the system. You cannot use it. And their report failed to state how they faked their testing on their test rig. They got the British Board of Agreement certificates. It said it was safe to use on buildings over 18 metres. The ACM cladding, goodness knows how that passed the test. And that got them the building. But then you've got to start considering what were the tests, the British standard tests. And you had a test of class O, which is a pretty dodgy test. Because the first thing you do when you've got your sheet of aluminium composite material is you bathe the perimeter of that board in water, so it's kept cold. You then put a flame against the aluminium and you see whether the flame spreads over the surface, ignoring the core. The second part of that test is you would put the material in an oven and heat it up, and you had to keep it there for a certain period of time without it catching, without the surface catching fire. Well, I know a person who had the material tested after Grenfell, and it almost passed the second test. It was always going to pass the first one. But what would happen in most of them, you have 3 attempts, is over those 3 attempts, the core would drop out, catch on fire. It wasn't a failed test, it was an invalidated test. So the very British standard testing, which the building research establishment and all the other people in the industry were using, that they ought reasonably to know wasn't a good test, was getting materials through into the building industry. So let's say you've got an ACM material which hasn't passed the test because it's been invalidated once it's been put in the kiln. How do you fix that? Well, 1, you could turn it into a cassette where the edges are sealed, or 2, you could crimp the edges so the material won't fall out. And then you can get a test, turn around and say, it's passed the British standard test, it is fit for use over 18 metres, despite the fact that you know it's highly dangerous. And we've got lots of materials in the industry that have gone through testing, which is part tested or fake tested, or it's been tested dozens and dozens and dozens of times until it's passed, and then they just broadcast that one. And so we've got problems right from the beginning of the testing of materials, right the way down to the installation at the end of the day when they don't follow the instructions on how it should be installed.
Have you seen much changes in the test? Have they taken note of this and have they begun to adapt and change, or has nothing changed in that regard?
The British standard Class O is now no longer really being used. It's going over to the BSEN standards, European standards. But even with BSEN standards on materials, there are flaws in the system. And the BS 8414 rig test doesn't represent what the building actually is, because it doesn't have the penetrations, it doesn't have the window combinations, it doesn't have the pipes which might be going through it. It's just tested as a system on its own and passed. The big problem is that when having materials tested, the people testing them know which side their bread is buttered. They know where their money's coming from. And so there's an incentive there by hook and by crook to get passes, because there's a direct link between them and the manufacturer. The only way of breaking that link is to put it through a separate government body. So you take your cladding system, you give it to the government, they then anonymise it, and they can send it out to test stations in this country or in Europe or abroad, and they can then have it tested, and they should have 2 sets of tests done in 2 different places. Then the anonymised material comes back. The money is coming from the government. There's no link between the tester and the manufacturer. So you're not going to get faked results, and the government can then say, yes, it passed, or no, it failed.
Do you think we'll ever get to that point?
No, because government don't want to do anything with it.
Even though they know that there's material tests that don't truly reflect as to what happens in a live fire situation.
Well, let's put it this way. The government was involved in the TF2000 test carried out by the Building Research Establishment in their airship hangar in Cardington. That test, the very final test, was a 1-hour fire test in a building that had been designed by the top designers. It had been built indoors in an airship hangar. It hadn't got Poets' Day with the people pushing off early because tomorrow's Saturday. It was all done, and the very last test was a 1-hour fire test. And that 1-hour fire test is done in a brand new room with perfect plasterboard. You don't have your flat screen TV hanging on the wall, which will melt at the top, fall down and rip holes in the plasterboard. You don't have your kitchen cupboard with your maybe a large container of cooking oil on the side, which is going to melt and spread cooking oil, which burns. It doesn't have a gas pipe coming through where the capillary joints can melt and shoot gas into the room. It's just a stack of wood. It didn't have downlighters in the room. It didn't have the extract fan. It had no radiators, no power sockets, no holes whatsoever. They did that test using a pile of wood set up as a crib, which doesn't represent a modern fire because it doesn't have the plastic in it, so it won't rise so quickly in temperature. At the end of the 1 hour, they come in, Luton and Beds Fire Brigade come in, they soak the room down completely, they put the fire out, they move all the material in the room that could reignite, and they all slap each other on the back and say, isn't that marvellous? It passed its 1 hour fire test. They lock up the airship hangar and go home. Now, as you know, above every single building in this country, about 20, 30 metres above your buildings, there are smoke detectors up there, aren't there? Well, of course there aren't. But in this situation, you have smoke detectors in the rafters of the airship hangar. And a number of hours later, they start going off. Luton and Beds Fire Brigade get down there, they go in there, and there is a fire spreading through the cavity, going up 3 stories. And the reason why is that when they did their thermal imaging testing, they couldn't see through the sodden plasterboard to the fact that the heat had passed through it and had already started the timber frame in there smouldering. And it took some time before that smouldering took place. Now, the TF2000 report says categorically that this is the Timber Frame Association, the government, the Building Research Establishment, all involved. It passed its fire test. How can you say it passed its fire test with unseen there was a fire in the cavity? And we are building timber frame buildings based on a perfect construction which hasn't been damaged by your daughter or son slamming the doors, creating cracks in the plasterboard, or your son playing darts and putting dart holes in the plasterboard. So it's a brand new building, and we've got a fake report allowing people to build timber frame multi-story. And this is going on time and time again. The results we're getting are fake. And there was a fire in a property. It was a 1960s property, 70s property in Croydon, Borough of Croydon. That was timber frame. They had changed the windows in that building to modern plastic ones. Had they not made the changes and they still had the old steel ones, I don't think the fire would have got into the cavity. But there was a lad in there, youngster, who was a bit of a fire raiser in a way. He liked playing with matches. He set a fire in this room. They got the fire brigade. They came out. They put the fire out, doused it all down. They then said it's safe to go back in the building. Well, they went back in the building. The family had moved out because of their smoke damage. And the building caught fire again because of the fire in the cavity, and the whole lot burnt down. Now, they were extremely lucky because that was over the winter during the December holidays. And a lot of people weren't in that building when it burnt down. But that fire took part at night when people were in bed asleep. And those are the problems we've got.
Do you think that there is a lot more corner cutting going on that maybe the responsible person of a building isn't aware of, or that they don't even realise is happening?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Okay, new build buildings with, a masonry structure with brick outside, block internal wall, and then dry lining. That dry lining is supposed to have a ribbon of adhesive all the way around the perimeter of the dry lining and all around all holes. It's not meant to go in just on dot and dab. But I do reports time and time again against the whole range of new build developers where that ribbon of adhesive is not there. So you get a fire, you get the increase in pressure in the room, forcing the smoke through every hole that is going out through that plasterboard up into the floor above. And on one of the jobs where we had a smoke test undertaken, the smoke from the pressure going into the building, and it was only a light pressure, caused smoke to get out into the bedroom above, underneath the bed, bypassing the smoke detectors in the hallways. So had there been a fire in that kitchen, and it had been a smouldering one, without creating enough heat to set off the heat detector, that would have been killing people in the bedrooms above. And you then get NHBC saying, oh, it's got nothing to do with fire, that, and you don't have to have the ribbon, etc., and you're hitting your head against the wall with even the biggest people who are meant to be looking after the purchasers, and they're not doing their job. Where can I go from there? Okay, a housing association property up in northwest London. They have metal frame stud work. And they have what's called a deflection head at the top of the stud, because the concrete floors move under load and they move under temperature, etc. And you go to British Gypsum and you go to Lafarge, they have designs for the top of that head of the wall. So what you have is an upside down U, you could call it an N without the little bit going up, sitting on the ceiling and fixed to the ceiling, and then the uprights to the stud slot into that, but they don't go full height. They have a plate which runs across horizontally below that ceiling to and below the upside down U channel to hold the upright studs together, and there's room to move up and down. You then put on your 2 layers of plasterboard, and then you've got a gap at the top where the metal would be accessible. So you put in other plasterboard to the side so that you've got a fire break. This building, that's not in there. When I take out the suspended ceiling in the hallway, I can see pipes going through the channel at the head. That's weakened the structure because you're meant to have a continuous channel. And you've got loads of holes and you've got the bare metal accessible. You then go into the property, and inside they had a gas boiler, which was a balanced flue. That goes into the ceiling. It goes across the hallway from that cupboard, across the bedroom, and then out through the outside wall. And you have access hatches. I then open up those access hatches and take a look inside. Well, you don't have the fire stopping at the heads of these walls there either. And there are holes going through the fire break wall into the kitchen living room and into the bedroom and into the hallway. Go into the kitchen and you have an extract fan going into that ceiling. You take that out, it's just a piece of plastic tubing. In a fire, that melts, the fire straight in the ceiling, it goes straight across the top of the ceiling, it's now out in the hallway, it's getting out into the escape routes. The whole lot is a mess, complete mess. That's been put into the fire brigade, who've done nothing. That has been put into the housing association, who have done nothing. Where do you go? Why is it being allowed? And all of these places are hidden. You get your fire risk assessor in, he walks down the corridor and says, oh yes, I've got a plasterboard wall. He doesn't lift out the ceiling. He doesn't test the holes above the fire doors. He doesn't take off the architraves around the fire doors to find that there's just air between that and the frame or the brickwork. They just tick the box. Yes, it's got a fire door. Yes, the door closes. But that's not a half-hour fire door. You'll be lucky if it's 10 minutes on some places. And this is happening time and time again because it's built shoddily, it's built quickly, and nobody really cares.
How does that make you feel that you're going into these places, you're raising the reports, you like you said, there is nobody that really cares? That must be difficult for you to feel that. It is. Like, where do you go? That must be really frustrating.
That is really frustrating, but now hopefully with the new people coming in, I'm going to be going to them over it.
Yeah.
Take, for example, Peabody in London. I go there because there's a flat which has had water coming through and the ceiling's collapsed to that flat.
Yeah.
I can only look at that flat. So I look at that flat, but I still go further. I take off the architraves to the fire door, brand new fire door. They spent a small fortune on these fire doors. And that fire door has a gap of about 60 millimeters above it with nothing in it. It has gaps around the side of the frame, straight into a staircase which is fully enclosed with no smoke vents.
Right, okay.
I then check the other doors, a couple of other doors, taking off the external architraves, same installation. They get their report. It's a Section 11 statutory nuisance disrepair under the 1985 Landlord and Tenant Act. And that act limits what I can report on and get done. I can only get the front door to this person's flat replaced. Peabody refuse to do all the other doors, not just to this, but to the other blocks they've got down the road in this set. They're not doing anything. Oh, that's for the fire risk assessor. So they're willing to sit there knowing that these doors to what should be a protected means of escape do not work.
And this is people's homes that we're talking about here as well, isn't it? People live here.
It's people's lives.
It's people's lives, exactly.
It's people's lives. Who cares about the home? It's the life that you're trying to save. And the front door to that flat, which has been replaced, provides safety to that protected means of escape should there be a fire in that one flat. That door there, that fire door, isn't there to protect the occupant of the flat. It's there to protect everybody else. All the other doors in that flat, in that block, are there to protect this tenant. So why doesn't the Section 11 disrepair allow me and the solicitors to legally prosecute Peabody and get them to mend all of the doors. That goes back to legislation, it goes back to government, and most of the government legislation ends up being rather cack-handed. Take, for example, the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order. It only covers the common parts. It didn't used to cover the external face. But now they cover the external face because of Grenfell. But I've been in a block with London Fire Brigade where as soon as they get them across the threshold into the flat, they're no longer interested. So you have a metal frame or a timber frame stud wall providing the fire protection to the escape route. The escape route is perfect on that side. Double layer plasterboard, you open up the power sockets, they're metal, they've got the gasket in there or the intermittent putty pad, and it complies. You go the other side to the kitchen, you open up the power socket, there's nothing in it, and it's a plastic one. So the fire inside the flat gets into that wall, and it's no longer a 1-hour firewall, is it? But you try and show the fire brigade, they are not interested because it doesn't come under the RRFSO.
Do you think if you compare that to a commercial property, so think about a tower block in London offices, would that be different than it is in a domestic setting where you've got a completely different risk? Is there more emphasis in a commercial environment to have these things in place?
Yes, in a commercial one, you're far safer in commercial because the fire brigade were interested in both sides of the walls because it's the whole of the place, you know, and a office block, they will have more fire escapes for the people to get out. And it's not a stay put policy. So you've got a better construction with a get out policy in a building where nobody is sleeping.
It sounds like the priorities are all wrong.
Yeah, they are.
In that vein, then, do you think the RP of a building should be held liable when a contractor or assessor delivers inadequate safety work?
What was the assessor instructed to do? What level of fire risk assessment was he carrying out?
Maybe not from an assessment point of view, then maybe from in the initial point, in the
initial point,
the
what
construction phase
is in the construction phase. We need to change the whole thing. Building control do not look at the fire stopping in buildings. That's not part of it's part of the building, but it's not one of the stages that they look at. So these things get missed. The developer, the builder, should be held responsible for all the errors in the property that are going to life safety. Even if it comes to light 20, 25 years later, they should still be responsible for putting it right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Me too.
The other thing you get, let's say new build housing, and I have a lot of problem with new build housing not meeting fire regulations and thermal regulations and everything else on top. If I would go to a garage, and even if I was to buy a second-hand car, and I brought it out of that garage, and I couldn't get that car above 20 mile an hour because there's something seriously wrong with the engine, I can take that back to that garage and say, look, Sales of Goods Act, you sold me something complete rubbish. I want all my money back. And that seller has to give you all your money back. So you get a house which you have bought, might have cost you £1 million, might have cost you £3 million. and you have a building which now needs all the plasterboard stripping out to put the fire safety right, and it's not meeting heat because all the insulation is wrong, and you've got whacking air drafts around all the windows because they've never been sealed. Why do we have a situation where you cannot say to the builder, I want all my money back? If we had a Sales of Goods Act which looked after purchasers of buildings to the same standard as me buying a digital camera, which didn't work, they should have to give you all your money back for a property brand new of that size and status in that area. And that way, if you hit the builders and the developers in their pockets, they will make damn sure that they've got everything right. And I'll be out of a job, and I don't mind being out of a job. I'll find something else to do.
Because you were quite right. People that are living and buying these houses, they simply won't know that this is going on, will they?
No, they don't. They buy a house which says it's got a super efficient energy system in the buildings. We've got ground source heat pump. We've got an air source heat pump. It's the top of the range. We specified it for the insulation. And they get in there, and in winter, they can't get the room above 15 degrees or 12 degrees or whatever, because it's never been installed properly. And that's why I'm getting a lot of the work, because you've got thermal images going in. Then I go and do the physical opening up. I get my hands dirty. I'm not your usual surveyor. I've long ladders. I get up 2 stories on the outside. I've done IRATA abseiling to do surveys of the exterior of buildings to find out what's wrong. And if you've done a thorough survey, you find out then all the numerous things that are wrong with buildings. And it always follows the same thing. If you can hide it behind the plasterboard or render and behind the brickwork, then who cares? But all of those bits which are hidden are the most expensive bits to get right once you've got it wrong. I've got a building I did a survey on where every brick was installed upside down. So you had the frog on the bottom than the top. So you've now got a building there where you don't have the load of the floors and the brickwork above being spread evenly over the brickwork below. It only does the perimeter. And when I did my inspection inside the cavity, the inside face wasn't bedded either. So you only have 3 sides of this brick, the 2 ends and the long side outside, which were taking the load. And then you get the brick manufacturer writing and saying, oh, that doesn't matter, you can do that. They've got no test results. Well, I waited until the person who wrote that moved, and I wrote back to the brick manufacturer myself with a fictitious property with the same brick, and I got a different answer. Under no circumstances should it be built that way. But there I had said it was a small builder who'd done it, not one of the big boys who buys billions of pounds worth of bricks. And you get that the whole of the time. I discovered that many years back with materials. I had a golf club where they put on the wrong carpet, which were getting ripped up by the metal studs on the golfing shoes. And the manufacturer who was supplying it to a major carpet installer, oh, no, that's what will happen. You can't do anything about that. So I then wrote under a fake name about Sundridge Golf Course, saying they use metal studs. We like the look of this carpet. Is it suitable for metal studs? And they come, oh, no, you mustn't use that. We'll rip it to shreds. You must use these ones. So even there, you get people giving fake evidence to get the big boys out of trouble.
You mentioned earlier, Arnold, about shoddy fire risk assessments and people doing 2 or 3 day courses and then going out doing fire risk assessments. Is that still going on, do you think? Is that still a practice that we're still seeing?
Oh, yeah, yes. Okay, Kennington, a small, fried chicken shop. The person who did the survey there for the one was the person who supplied the fire extinguishers and installed them and maintained them. Well, he didn't even know how to install a flipping fire extinguisher. They were too high up the wall. One of them was at head height, a big one, not a small one of the full-size ones. How do you get that down? They had the dry powder extinguishers, which shouldn't be used inside a building, totally unsuitable. They had a deep fat fryer, which should have had a wet chem fire extinguisher, and it didn't have one. And he does this fire risk assessment, which basically says nothing's wrong. I go in there, there's holes everywhere. There's holes through walls, there's holes through the ceiling into the flat above the suspended ceiling, you name it. They got the extinguishers wrong. I was insisting that they had to put in a wet chem, which will lay on top of the fat and saponify, providing a thick layer over the fat to stop the fire. He supplies one. He sticks that right up next to the deep fat fryer, where you actually have to go round the deep fat fryer to get it.
Yeah.
Before you can use it. And this guy is doing fire risk assessments and getting it wrong. He can't even install a fire extinguisher.
What questions then should the client be asking? Because I guess if they have done their due diligence, they would have realised that this person's not competent to do that. What is the sorts of things that they should be looking for and asking?
Well, let's first of all say, is the person who's instructing someone to do a fire risk assessment competent enough to do due diligence?
Yeah, it's a good starting point.
And most people aren't. They don't know what they're asking. It's different if you've got a large corporation having things done. You have a small business, maybe an accountant. He's got offices. How can he do due diligence? All he knows about is the tax system.
Mm.
It shouldn't be put back on people who have no ability to do due diligence.
Yeah.
It should be assessed nationally. It should be a government scheme. They should do spot checks on these people. They should be doing it. And the reason we have the problems we have today is because the Labour government took away the powers of inspection, etc., and the authority from the fire brigades. The fire brigades used to have departments with people who were incredibly well qualified and would walk into a building and say what's wrong. But that's all gone now, because it was a political decision based upon the fact that they were fed up with them going on strike.
Do you think it will become mandatory, like a legal requirement almost, to have some form of qualification to be a risk assessor?
I think it should be. But then qualifications isn't a measure of competence.
Quite right.
It's only a certain amount of knowledge. When I did a first talk with British Standards about fire risk assessment, my thing was the first thing that a fire risk assessor must be able to do is think for themselves, look at a situation and say, I haven't seen that before, and then work it out. But so many people go in with their eyes wide shut. And it's a tick box. There's that here, there's that here, there's that here. I was in a hotel down in Southampton, and I always go round and check my fire exits. I want to know which routes I go, what alternative routes I go. I want to know what's blocked, how many doors, blah, blah, blah. I followed the fire exit signs and I ended up in their kitchens. What are you doing here? I said, I'm following my fire escape route. No, fire escape route doesn't come through here. I said, oh, yes, it does.
That's what your signage says.
I'm following your signage. And they'd only had it checked a week before.
That was thorough then.
And passed off. And the problem is that the person goes in and doesn't think. He goes in and says, oh, yes, you've got fire escape signage. He doesn't think, where the hell does that lead me? And that's where you make mistakes. At the same talk, I actually went there. It was, oh, good gracious. Anyway, it was a centre point of the building. And I was doing a talk there for the first time I did it for British standards. And I went there and they were doing the works for the underground outside. And one of the fire exits was closed off and everything. I actually changed my talk from, but I used the images, but I did it about my critique of the building.
Oh, wow.
The first thing I said, so you've got people from fire brigades there, you've got all the top people. And I said, who has checked their fire escape routes? Where the fire escapes are? Few hands went up. Said, who has actually looked in the fire escape routes to see where it leads? Nobody. I said, well, if you go out from the fire escape over there, you'll come onto a staircase and it's full of chairs and desks. If you go out of this exit here and you go through the doors, you'll find some fire extinguishers. The trouble is that those fire extinguishers are behind a door which opens outwards. And if you're bending over to pick up this fire extinguisher, someone opens that door and brains you. It's in the wrong place. You go down the stairs to the bottom, you will find that you cannot get out. The final flight of stairs is all blacked out. There's no other signage, and the only thing stopping you from going down those stairs is a dark blue rope between two upright silver poles. I said, so if you're running down there and think you're going to continue going down those stairs, you will take those poles with you. You will fall out and you'll be in a bundle at the bottom of the stairs in a place where you can't escape because of the works at London Underground. You go and find your refuges, and the smoke seals to the doors do not touch. So that will fill up with smoke. If you go over there, there's a fire escape route, but it's locked because it's going into offices. And next to it is an evac chair, but you won't find that evac chair because it's behind a large plant pot. And even if you did and you got it out, there's no emergency lighting in the area for you to be able to read how to put the thing up to get some disabled person out of the building. I said, and that is centre point. And that is a building where you've got people going into. And I'll go one further. London Fire Brigade headquarters. I was there for Institute of Housing meeting. And at the bottom of their building in Union Street, you have a large area which you have your meetings in. And it's higher up than the outside street. And there is a fire escape going down, which you then turn left, go out a fire door, and you're out. At the top of the stairs were several stacks of chairs. Behind the fire escape were all these daises or boxes or something, all piled up, hickledy-pickledy. The meeting was attended by Sir Ken Knight. It was attended by commissioners in the London Fire Brigade. They had other members of the London Fire Brigade. I took photographs of it all, and I kept my mouth shut. Afterwards, I then wrote to the fire brigade, sending them the photographs and asking them why in the headquarters of the London Fire Brigade do you breach the regulatory reform fire safety order by having staircases that can be blocked by chairs falling down or other things falling on top of you? Their response was, why didn't you tell us at the time? My reply, I was waiting to see which one of you spotted it.
Yeah, why should they only just be on you to tell them?
Not my thing.
Yeah.
But that is the London Fire Brigade. And when they're getting it wrong in their own building, what hope do we have in buildings where people don't have the fire training?
Yeah. That is a scary thought in itself.
How do you think we can improve fire safety standards or knowledge?
A very simple one is, how do you use a fire extinguisher? That should be taught to 15, 16-year-olds. That how you handle it, how you recognise the extinguisher, what sort of usage you use it, the fact that you're not going to put out a very large fire with a water extinguisher because you can barely put out a bin fire. And it will stop people grabbing hold of fire extinguishers, failing to give a test squirt, and walk into a fire with an extinguisher that doesn't work. And how to remain safe. My normal advice to people when it comes to extinguishers is, if you haven't been trained, treat them as decorative and ignore them. Get out. And you'll even find at the Houses of Parliament, if you ask the police there, who have lined up fire extinguishers, how do you use a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher? What do you use it for? They don't know. They haven't even been trained.
No, I think that's it's a great idea. I mean, I don't know about you, but until I started here, I had no idea fire extinguishers needed servicing. I didn't know anything about fire. I had no idea of anything fire related other than the smoke alarm in my house went off sometimes when Mum was doing a Sunday roast.
Yeah.
Other than that, I had no idea about any of it. So no, you're right. I think getting in at a base level and giving people knowledge of fire safety from a young age, or younger age at least, would be a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
If there was one thing, Arnold, that you could change in the sort of fire safety sphere overnight, what would that be? I know one thing might be difficult for you, but...
There are many one things.
You can't say all of them.
I would say right at the beginning, go back to how it used to be with local authority building control doing the building control, and not having all these private industry people out there who again are affected by trying to get the next job off the builder, and pay them better on the fees and give them better standards of checking fire stopping in buildings, so that becomes a critical part of that, the fire compliance.
So, Arnold, we've reached everyone's favourite time in the podcast. It is time for our burning question. Today's burning question was left to you by the fantastic Elspeth Grant, and it is...
Great lady.
Great lady. Amazing. What is the biggest missed opportunity of your life?
Biggest missed opportunity of my life? Not being bothered to learn foreign languages and thinking people should speak English. That was a big mistake, but I'm making amends now. I can greet in numerous languages, 6 Nigerian languages, about 20 African, about 5 ones from the sort of Indian subcontinent, etc. And that opens up a lot of avenues. It breaks the ice. If you can greet a camel with Welcome, or a Sinhalese with Ayabowen, or Bawoni for a Yoruba, or J Baliko for someone who speaks Luganda, or Musqueira Say for a Shona speaker, and you actually then have a link that you've actually bothered to learn something and understand that. And that then opens up lots of other conversations. Oh, sorry, I don't know anymore, but I just do know how to say hello.
Yeah.
Like, it's that bit of effort, I think, that will set you apart from everyone else that they meet, that you've bothered to try at least.
Yeah, and then starting to learn their cultures, what they do. You'll often find that if you're, let's say, doing a survey with an African family, they will ask you to join them for a meal if it's lunchtime. I will join them for their meal. I will share with them because that is part of their culture. And then you're more on a par with them, and it works really well. When I became a deacon at my church, I greeted the church in just over 20 languages spoken at the church.
Oh, wow.
I left the Welsh out because he's my house group leader. He said, "You left the Welsh out." So the next time I was doing the notices, I said, I did get criticised for not using the Welsh. So let's greet the Welsh here. Oggy, oggy, oggy. And everybody points out, oi, oi, oi.
I was gonna say.
It's breaking the ice, making contact. That is very important in relations with the people you meet. And I just enjoy learning things. So from Gambia in Wolof, jam and gum is a greeting. So I only learnt that one about a month or two back.
That's amazing. So what would be your burning question for our next guest?
Burning question for the next guest. How do we get government to take responsibility for their failures in legislation?
It's a good question.
Big one. Right, well, Arnold, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. It's been very informative, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Okay. Pleasure to be with you, George and Jake.
Thank you, Arnold. It's great to meet you. Take care.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and follow.